Hey, welcome back to the On Brand, On Purpose podcast, where identity, influence, and intentions align. I'm your host, Sharice Janelle, and today I am joined by global marketer Bukky for a bold conversation on leadership, legacy work, and how people, disruption, and faith come together to shape a personal brand that actually lasts. Let's get into it. Bukky, you are a global marketer and brand strategist out of the DMV. I am so excited that we get this time to chat. As you've seen from my other podcasts, I just want to vibe. I just want to talk to girlfriends and just have conversations around the world of personal branding and how that flows into our lives. And you and I have had these conversations organically, more than we've even called it personal branding, right? We connected early on through the LEAP program, which we can talk a little bit more about. And from there, it's just been like, girl, let me follow you. Let me see what you're doing. Let me see how I can support. So we'll bring the world into our journey as we've gotten to know each other over the past 3, 4.
Yes.
What year was that, girl?
Yeah, it had to be sometime within 2022.
Okay. So tell me what was going on in 2022 for you.
So I was transitioning out of my time at Twitter, which was a joy. Well, it's a joy up until the last couple of months, but definitely a joy. One of the things that LEAP provided an opportunity, and for those that don't know what LEAP is, it's a program for growing leaders within the marketing advertising industry. And you have an opportunity to be together over 4-5 months, and you learn
Yeah.
different tools and educational tools anyway. And so you are recommended by leaders within your company to be a part of it. It's not something that you apply for. Luckily, I had great sponsorship through Leslie Berland and Goddess Rivera, who said to Antonio Lucio, who said like, hey, you should be a part of this program. And so at that time, I was leading some of the most dynamic work at Twitter within our global culture and community. And obviously, establishing our presence on the continent of Africa. I always say that felt and continues to feel like legacy work, that I knew like far beyond the time that I would, transition out of the role, that there would still be roots of that work in the world. And so I was really proud about that. So LEAP was definitely a growth opportunity for me to continue to build my leadership.
Yeah, same. And I'm glad you explained that for everyone. I know I jumped right into it. And to your point, we were referred. I didn't know until I got an email that says, you're in this program,
Mhm.
right? And so I kind of went in with this eyes wide open, like, what am I going to get from it? But I think just the essence of I was being invited to the room to connect with global leaders like yourself, I think in itself is just super dope. But you mentioned something around legacy work,
Yeah.
which I don't hear people talk about as much. I'm well aware of the expression, but what does that mean for you?
I don't think I ever had the words articulate what it is, but I've always been focused on work that will always outlive me. I think oftentimes in working roles, especially within the industry, it's like who gets credit, who gets the award, who gets to say that they put their stamp on it. But the reality is a lot of the things that we work on, it's important to understand like the foundation of how we're building, because it has to be something for those that are coming up after us to be able to continue to build on. I always have thought about like, what's the sustainability? If you ask anyone on my team, I'm like, what's the long tail of this? Like, what's the sustainability strategy? Like, how can we make this
Mhm.
sustainable? How, when I leave, what can we make sure we're leaving behind? And so when I think about marketing and how we get to frame and shape the way that people experience different products and services within the world, it's important that we lead with what is our offering and contribution in that way that will leave legacy. And legacy work to me is something that I believe will far outlive me. And I want my kids to be able to be like, my mom did that. And I want my team to be like, yo, we did that. I still think back to my time at different places throughout my career where I can look back, even if programs have evolved, people still have a sentimental place of where they see how work has landed with them. And to me, that is the real win and award.
Oh, girl, you're the first marketer I've had, and so I feel like we can go
Let's go.
deep on this.
Let's do it.
In these unprecedented times,
Mm, mm,
just to
hmm.
I feel like we're in this space where it's just so much thrown at you, and I think even in a corporate environment, you just get in this very tactical mindset.
Yeah.
It's the fire drill. It's the reactive mindset. And what I love what you just said is like what is true has always been true for me. Is I only work on brands, number one, that I see a sense of purpose and passion in. So I think the challenge though is we're in times where I don't feel like a lot of folks are thinking about that long tail,
Yeah.
you know, and it's tough. It's tough for marketers who, like you, are focusing on legacy work. Have you always had this mindset as a marketer? I mean, how many years have you been in the game? Give us a little bit of your background.
Yeah. So I actually have a non-traditional path to marketing. So I started out my career in human resources. I studied business management and marketing at Howard University, HU, everybody. And then I got a role in HR, and I kept saying like I love people, I love culture, I love building, talent, like talent acquisition. But you quickly learn in HR that the quality of candidate that you're able to attract depend on how the brand and the business is seen out in the marketplace, right?
Mhm.
Marketing, right? And so to me, again, I didn't have the language to say like I'm a marketer, but I was just like, we need to show up here, and this is how we need to show up, and this is what our branding needs to look like, and this is what we need to wear, and we need to talk to people like this. And so there was all this work around branding. And so over time, the marketing teams were like, wait, hold on. We doing a little too much. Like, wait, we showing up here, we're doing this, and like press is talking about the company in this way. And this is what I would say, my career is built upon me raising my hand and doing the things that nobody else wants to do. So
Mhm.
when it came down to, I didn't pigeonhole myself to say like I'm in HR, all I do is recruiting. And so when a opportunity came up, the head of marketing was like, okay, like, are you going to show up here? Yeah, I'll show up here and I'll do it. And over time, my perspective and my opinion and what I thought was an important strategy for us to think about recruiting was a part of it. And so it kind of just like over time became this way of me understanding, how does a brand want to be seen in the marketplace? How do we shift perspective if they want to recruit a different type of candidate? How do they do that? And so marketing became my bright light in the world of HR, because I felt like that was like the bridge, because it all interconnected and it helped the way that we were seen externally.
Wow. I mean, again, we can go on a tangent here, but I am a firm believer in your output is only as good as your input.
Hmm.
Right. And when it comes to marketing, I mean, you said a lot there that I fully align with. It's like a consumer on the external is going to look at the internal, you know?
Mhm.
Sure, they may be razzle dazzled by the first moment of truth of whatever packaging.
Yeah,
They're going to start double clicking,
they are.
and the values and how employees are treated. And now we're in this world again where everyone is vocalizing all the ins and outs
Yep.
publicly. People are taking notice of that.
We have transitioned, I believe, in a place where like quick, fast, what do we do? And I do think we actually need to evolve and be faster. I'm not saying that we slow down. However, I do think that the front load of work that a brand and company needs to do in order to for the fabric of their brand and their values to be true is to build that foundationally. People leave, tenures are up, retirement happens. When
Right.
the core people who were your brand stewards leave, what is left? And if you don't have that, there's nothing that you can do when the moment flips. And I won't say a specific brand, but I'll talk about a big box retailer. When things happened, when their values shifted, the people also shifted. And then
Mm.
people's perspective of the brand immediately changed. Immediately, people were able to be like, something in the water ain't clean, and I'm not with it. And that to me is like what we always have to be mindful of as leaders, executives of these brands, that we want to have this kind of like long tail or long term impact that we have to be mindful of as we build.
Yes. I work for said
Mhm.
retailer. So did you know that?
I did.
Look at you sliding that in there.
I didn't say the name.
So this leads to, and this is such an integral conversation because when I coach on personal branding, I'm using marketing fundamentals. I'm using building big brand fundamentals. And
Hmm.
as people think about their own brands, right? It is all the same vein. And as we've talked about, your internal, your foundation
Hmm.
needs to be right for
Hmm.
that long-term sustainable work. What role does the building up of the people internally, the employees, right? Like, what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, so I think that the most important part is that you have to have people who believe in what you are selling, right? And so if someone is just there for a crash grab or as a bridge role, especially in leadership, right? Like, you need to have someone that's all in, right? In the sense that like they are invested in the work, they're invested in their role in contributing to the work, the people that they're leading to the, goal of the company for that period of time. And then also empowering them to manage and lead throughout that, right? And so we've all heard the stories where you get in, you have this beautiful role title
Mhm.
and you get in, you're not empowered to activate, you're not financially resourced, you're not empowered in meetings to like share your perspective. People need to feel out the gate supported in order for their management style and their leadership style to be able to have the impact. And if they don't feel supported from the top, then they're going to continue to kind of shrink in what they believe is the most important part.
What I always tell people, it falls on both sides. So I do think there's an opportunity for more organizations to do more leadership training,
Yeah.
coaching, development, etc. But we also have an obligation to be firm on who we are as our brands and how we want to show up
Yeah.
as well. And therefore do the other external development that enables you to be stronger. And again, it goes back to personal branding
Yeah.
and how you value your career, what's your
Mhm.
purpose, what's your passion, and being able to live that despite.
Yeah.
I've have many conversations with colleagues who are saying, "Oh, Sharice, well, how did you get that opportunity? Well, how did you do that? We start at the same time. How did you get that?" Right? And I would tell them straight up, like, this is how I navigated because I was clear on what I wanted for myself. That was a win-win for the corporation as well. I think that's key,
Yeah.
but if I just sat and waited for someone to tell me what I could learn or when I could develop, I would not be where
100%.
I am today.
100%.
And again, it goes back to a lot of what you said at the beginning, which is legacy work. I've always had legacy as one of my core values
Mm.
throughout every phase of my career,
Yeah.
which is why I was able to discern when it was time to leave
Mhm.
or how long I wanted to stay based on am I being fulfilled with my legacy.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
don't think enough people are having a conversation with themselves on what actually matters.
I agree. I
Or
agree.
maybe they are.
Well,
Maybe they are.
I think it's intentional work. And I think that there's also room for the spontaneity of life to happen. I always say, like, serendipity happens when I'm in action. Like, you have to be doing something for those moments to happen, right? So you have to be intentional about like what you're doing, what you're going after. But there's also this thing where like the spontaneous, the things that like you can't even plan for happen
Mhm.
because you're in action in your emotion and you have to be putting in the work. And so I think that sometimes people almost are sometimes are too hands off. They're like, "We're just gonna let everything anybody you just tell me what
Yeah,
to do and I'm gonna go." And I'm like, that can work. We have seen examples of that when it works, but they're oftentimes more, especially women of color, like, no, you have to be intentional about what you want. And even if that season is my intention is to rest in this period.
that part
As long as you know exactly what you're doing, and if you want and then in a year or 2, you're saying, like, "I'm about to get back on it," as long as you know exactly what you're going after, I think that's most important.
is the purpose. It's the intentionality. I just posted something the other day about planning joy, planning rest. That is all part of the master plan.
Mhm, mhm,
Period.
mhm, mhm.
And understanding that that's gonna help me be sustainable
Yeah. And I
long term.
think that this like planning joy, I think that I know we're talking about like personal branding and work, but I also think that there's a part of this that like it's really important for us to build up who we are outside of the workplace and outside of the planning and intentional personal branding. Obviously, I love that. I know it. But like my thing is just kind of like we are whole fully in so many different ways. But we also have to be intentional about that. Like, we also have to be intentional about, like, our sleep, our rest, our joy, our friendships. How are we investing? I was on a call the other day, and, one of the coaches was like, she looked around and she was looking for her village, and over time, she realized, like, in order to have a village, you need to be a villager. You have to show up for your friends. You have to be there for them, and so it's like
Yeah,
this constant thing where it's just kind of like, what you want in life, you also have to put up effort and work in, and that requires all of you, not just who you are during your 9 to 5 in your corporate role or how you're, pursuing a path of personal branding, but who you are as a mom, as a sister, as a wife, as a auntie, whatever those, your titles are. It's like,
Yeah.
how do you continue to invest and pour into that part of you so that you're looking for a full, 360 well-rounded woman before you every time you look at the mirror?
I'm glad you said that because I do think when people hear personal branding, they do go straight to their career.
Mhm.
And I focus more on the well-rounded person. Like
Yeah.
who are you?
Yeah.
Despite the title of all titles, by the way. The
Mhm.
title of mom, right?
Yeah.
The title of daughter, the title of, nonprofit board, member.
Mhm.
Like who are you?
Yeah.
And then how do we build that ecosystem around you that aligns with who you want to be?
Mm.
I did a values exercise and I do this with a lot of my clients. All values are good. I
Mhm.
mean, just table stakes. I'll say that, it is all relative. It is personal, but it's a stack of 100 values, right?
Mhm.
And I ask my clients to drill down into their top three. I'm going to ask you yours soon. So start thinking through. When I did the exercise about 3 years ago,
Yeah.
which I was navigating a lot of transition,
Mhm.
one of the words I used was legacy,
Mm.
which which is why, we've been tracking on this conversation. The other word I used was faith.
Mm.
And the third word I used, I recognize would have been controversial to most people if I said it out loud, but it was self-fulfillment.
Mm.
And at that moment, and still, because those three words still hold true, it was me getting back to myself.
Mm.
And again, there's no right or wrong,
Yeah.
right? I think there would be an expectation as a mom and as a leader and of all these things to say family,
Yep.
to say something else that would have just checked the box and people know that I'm a sound woman, right?
Mhm.
But I was like, I got to get back to myself.
Yeah.
Will I enjoy this? Am I planning my fulfillment? And that was the pivot and the shift for my whole life, my
Mhm.
career,
Mm.
my relationship with my daughters when they saw me happy
Yes.
and fulfilled. My company now sees me more fulfilled. And so to your point, like people get really hyper focused on personal branding, but I really take us back to the center, like of who you are. And then everything else will align.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad you brought that up because for many people, they may see it only as that like direct threat and they think about a LinkedIn profile, but it's like just how you show up.
How do you show up? If you think about it, there's such a beautiful thread in your entire life that if you just kind of like all the dots and you said there's a common thread throughout all your experience and all the things that you like, that you will always go back to the thing. I used to say, I've always known I want people, always know I'm a disruptor. I never knew the language, but it was always disruption
Mm,
disruption, and to your point, faith. Like I always knew that those core things were where I always found myself back to. It don't matter if we could talk about where I worked when I was in high school. Like it was still people and it
yep.
was like this common thread about like disruption. We could do something different. This doesn't make any sense. Why can't we do it this way? Like who told me at 16 to tell Shoppers Food Warehouse how they bag a little different? But for me, it was like this takes longer. Can we do something different? In my mind, I was just trying to be helpful. But like even now, I see the seeds of that back
Yeah.
then of me saying like people. I'm always around people. I'm always built on my faith, and then also making sure that like fundamentally, there's always something I could do to change, and not in just for change's sake, but because I think that is important.
So, ma'am, did you just say your three words?
Those weren't the 3 words that I had thought in my
Well,
this
and
conversation.
so I ask every guest, what three words would you use to define your brand? And more often than not, the people that have a thought of what they're going to say, we massage it
Yeah.
in session, if you will, because I do think those three words are inevitably derived from our values.
It's
So,
crazy. Those were not my 3 words that
so what's your three words? Let's.
so my 3 words that I just said are not the 3 words that I thought about, but the 3 words that I thought about was creativity, innovation, resilience. So, like, those are
Mm-mm.
my 3 words. Ever, like, when I rewind the tape, people, disruption, and faith.
I told you this was gonna happen.
You know what? That's so crazy. You good. Okay, all right. You know what you're doing
I'm
on me.
good. I'm good. Look.
Pull it out of me. Okay.
What I love about this is there's no right or wrong. And
Yeah.
here's my gut. When you say creative, innovative, and resilience,
Mhm.
right? These are true.
Yeah.
These are absolutely true. And I see that from you and how you navigate. And we're going to talk a little bit more about your ventures. That totally makes sense. But The words you just said, people, faith, and disruption, that's legacy work.
Mm, mm. It just came out.
It just came
It
out,
just came out. But that
you
is
know?
my common thread. That is my common thread.
And that's it. And that's why I love having this conversation because oftentimes we just need someone to nudge us and say, "Girl, did
Mm,
you just hear yourself?" Because we sometimes we say words, and again, like I said, none of these words, creative, innovative, resilient, those are not bad words at
mm,
all. They are inspiring words. And there's someone if you put that on a resume, they'll say, "Yep, she checks the box."
mhm.
You put people, faith, and disruption.
What's going on here? Mhm. Talk to me. Mhm.
But this is the pivot we'll make on this conversation because I just had a dialogue with someone about leadership, going back to our
Mhm.
conversation.
Mhm.
And someone, saying, "Hey, I'm a leader. Leadership's my thing." And what I said to her was, "What type of leadership?"
Mm, mm, mhm.
And because there's levels to it. And again, I'm not even gonna say there's a right or wrong level,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
there's a spectrum. So what I have found and what I believe is we've lost a lot of the people leaders.
Mm,
The people, and you can define that in any way, shape, or form. But I recall in my career, the leaders that stood out were the people who I were like, "You actually care.
mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
You stopped in that hallway to just say, 'Hey, how are you doing?'
Yep. Yep.
You checked in on me.
Mhm.
You sent my kid a gift you know, just because." That's the stuff that I don't see a lot of that I think we need to bring back if we want to truly, hone talent
Yeah.
within.
I mean, I think that goes right back to the earlier point about, like, do you have a heart for people? Like,
Yeah.
some people are excellent at doing what you do, but you're not a people leader, right? You're not meant to manage people. I think when we think about brands, the souls of brands are missing because they're racing and rushing to the next thing and not understanding that the thing that will underpin all of that is having people, leaders who care. I'm gonna tell you this. I've had leaders who have been phenomenal, who I run through the walls for. Like, "You need me Son, okay." Like, "What you need?" Because not because of fear, not because that I needed the money,
Mhm.
but because I cared about making sure that I did well for myself, but I made them look good, that our
Yeah.
team looked good, and that we were marching forward to something. They made me believe in, like, what we were building, and so that required sometimes outside of a 9 to 5 hours. That required me to show up more, that required me to raise my hand more. There are some leaders who I'm just like, "It's 4:59." And I'm out, like, and seen. You know what I mean? And I think that in order for us to continue, especially in the season that I believe that we are in the world and what's
Yeah.
happening, like, social, politically, economically, all the things, like, is that, like, the world is not going to tell us to change. The world is actually moving us to further and further away from it. We
Correct.
actually need
Yeah.
people at the core who are gonna, "This is my line, and this is where I'm gonna hold fast on for my team," and then having leaders above them say, "Rock, Imma let you rock. Do what you need to do," because the world is gonna continue to tell us to run away from it.
Yeah. And it's such a shame. A gentleman reached out to me about a month ago. Someone sent him my way
Mhm.
to just give perspective on a company. And I forget the specific question that he asked me, but he was just like, will there be runway for my growth?
Mm.
And I had to pause. I pride myself, if you ask me any question, I'm going to answer
But, you
as
finna be
honestly,
honest.
as candidly as I can be, right? But I paused in that and I said, I think you need to think about that question. Nothing is guaranteed, unfortunately. Sure. Well, do I think a hiring manager at that company would say, sure, we're here for the long haul. We want to support you. You got to look at the actions of the company. That's on you to do the research.
Yep, yep.
And I had to reframe it because it's so easy to be like, oh, sure, they care about, I can't answer that honestly today. I can't answer it honestly,
Mhm,
and that doesn't mean that they don't or
mhm.
they do. It's just I don't know from their actions if they do,
Yeah.
and that's tough.
Yeah, I gotta examine the question, right? To your point of, like, There's nothing that's guaranteed. One part of my journey that I haven't fully shared is that, like, every role that I've worked at, I've been the first in my role. So, like, it
Mm.
hasn't been something that, like, in college, I couldn't say, "I wanna be the global director of brand innovation and strategy." Like, I didn't know. I mean, if you asked me for real, I wanna be a CMO. Oh, great. Like, you
Mhm.
know what I mean? That was the only language that I was like, "Okay, I know that that's what I wanna do," right? But I think that you have to leave room for serendipity and stuff to happen where it's just kind of like there is no magic path anymore in whatever career field that you want, right? There's new evolving technology and things happening around our world that you just have to be open for how the world is going to change and what is your contribution to it. Going back to the legacy, what is your contribution? And if you have a unique value add or a unique perspective that can get us further or something where you think it makes the world better, let's do it. Do it. Follow it. Find it. Chase it.
And look, the answer to him could have been like, this is one of those companies, it's a 2-year stint.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's bad. Again, how do you maximize that 2-year stint? So to your point, I think if we're more clear on what we want, I don't know if you would even ask that type of question. I think you would focus on what matters to you in that moment as a part of your legacy, to be
Uh-huh.
clear, right? There's phases, there's moments, and it could be, I need a job for the next 2 years that's going to give me exposure to X, Y, and Z. That's going to sharpen my skill set on this, this, this. I'm in it. And I'm thinking about it as a phase in my journey versus will I be there forever?
Yeah.
And I've fallen into that. And again, this is taking maturity and evolution on my own because I want to be at a company forever. I just, and then I'm like,
Wow.
well, I did the economics of it, actually. It was more around like, what? Let me think about that for a second. The numbers were actually,
That's nothing over here.
yeah, it was, it sounds good in theory. It's just like, how does that
Mhm.
play out? Bookie,
Yes.
to me about the legacy work you're doing
Yeah.
beyond the
God,
9 to
that's
5, honey.
my 3 words, people, disruption, and faith. What I believe makes me a really good marketer, right? I'm gonna say this, is that, like, I believe that I have a really strong ability to take information, insights, and then frame them up in a way that what is our individual brands or company's contribution to the thing, right? And so one of the things, as I was talking earlier about my legacy work at Twitter, was that we had established our presence on the continent of Africa, and we were continuing to do that. And I'm African, I'm Nigerian. Like, I obviously love, like, going back to the continent and just being embraced by the people and all the local designers and all the things. And so for me, it was really important that, like, I understood and continue to understand, like, how the world will continue to see Africa, right? I think Afro beats, music, sports have shifted the way that people experience the continent, right? But there still is always like this level of hesitation about, like, I want to go back home. I want to do the things, but, like, how do I do it? And so I do think that we're in a very unique time where we have an opportunity. The United Nations General Assembly came out with a report a couple years that talked about, like, year 2050. So by the year 2050, one in every four people will be identified as African. That's number one. And by the year 2050, the largest youth population between the ages of 15 and 24 will be on the continent. Okay.
Mm,
There's so many more statistics, but those are the two statistics that I was like, whoa, talk to me. Like, what's going on? In 2025, I built African Women's Collective, which is a global network of women who are in marketing, advertising, and business passionate about the continued progress of Africa. Africa's already a superpower, right? My thing is, like, how do we continue to build that? And I was really specific in regards to marketing, advertising, and business because I believe that we're in an integral place in life where framing of how people consume and understand and want to engage with Africa is based upon the marketing, the social media. And so many women, dynamic, intelligent, expert women are leading the strategy behind some of your favorite brands and how they're thinking about establishing their presence on the continent of Africa. And so for me, going back to my 3 values as you helped me learn today, people, right? Like, how do we bring community? How do we bring people together in order for this other thing to happen, right? Disruption. Is there an opportunity for us from an industry perspective to disrupt the way that we are thinking, experience, consume, engage, invest with the
mhm.
continent in really dynamic, profound, and strategic ways that doesn't extract from it, but we actually help support it. And then finally, faith. I have shared this with you. I try to have someone else bring, and I'm going to get emotional and I'm going to try my best not to, but I tried my best to give African to someone else because for
Mm,
me, it was like, I don't have enough years. I'm not a 20-year marketer that can stand on business at, I say I'm a Hall of Fame marketer. I don't have that. So like, what do I have to give? So somebody,
mm,
please, somebody, anybody, come help be the face of it. Well, I'm happy to be the person behind the scenes doing the work. And I was really struck in 2025 because I thought about just like how much our world can change so much in 25 years. In 2025 is when I read it, right? In 2050, it feels really far away.
right.
But 25 years prior was 2000. We thought the world was going to end because of a Y2K bug in 2000. But now we're
Mm,
using AI and everything else to like inform how we even write emails, right? And I'm just like, how much can the world change? How much can investments, support, amplification of women to shift the way that we experience and talk about and invest and live? And we
mm,
always talk about, I'm out of here. Like, but like, what if you do have another home on the continent? How do you invest in that? How do you learn about it? And
mm,
so the goal really with African is to have a community of women who are passionate about the continued progress of Africa and then who are committed to being contributors to its success. And that looks very different across industries, where there's travel, whether it's food and culture, whether it's fashion, whether it's art, it looks different across the gamut. But the important thing is that can I call you and say, hey, I want to do this thing. This is the idea. Tell me if this is going to work. Are there leaders or government officials or boards that I can sit on, support, help, financially invest, give money
mm,
to that I can continue to help make sure that the bridge of how we think about people across the diaspora who are looking or interested or just intrigued, want to talk about the continent,
yeah,
there's soft landing for them to and so I always talk about what are my contributions, what is my legacy work. What I can offer is my experience, my expertise, this connective tissue of women in advertising, marketing, and business, which is the career that has absolutely changed my life. But also I have believe that has the opportunity to shift the way that people experience or understand the continent. And then when maybe they will think a little bit and open their eyes a little bit more to see like what's the opportunity for me to visit or invest or
yeah.
build a home or build a business or support a nonprofit. Whatever the thing is, we just want to make that a smoother landing for people.
Girl, that's awesome.
Mm.
You said something, and I'm not trying to take you back there, but I want to intentionally because that's just what I do.
Mhm.
You are doing the work. We want the accolades.
Mhm.
We were taught the accolades
Mhm.
were how we define ourselves.
Mm.
You're doing the damn work,
Mhm. Mhm.
regardless of someone seeing you and saying, okay, Bukky, we'll put you on our list.
Yeah.
Come to our gala.
Mhm.
I love the galas, child. I use it as a segue as we wrap to say, what does success look like for you?
Mm. Success looks like a few things. Leading with integrity. It's really important to me that, like, I'm always checking my heart's posture for something. So, my intention behind something. Like, I'm really clear not to go after things that are externally driven, right? So,
Mhm.
if it's something I'm like, oh, I want to do this. I want to. Then I feel a pressure to do it. If it's external, I'm like, well, is it because that person said it, or is that because like this will put you in a position here, and then someone will see you here and see this?
Mhm.
So it's really important for me to lead with integrity with myself, right? Another success is just like honoring the parts of me that can be seen as flaws. Like, um, when I was doing your exercise, one of the words that kept coming up for me was like that I'm sensitive, right? Like it comes up in every part of my life. I'm sensitive, I'm emotional.
What's your sign, child?
Baby, I'm a Capricorn. So baby, we not gonna show it though. We not gonna show it. But I am sensitive. And when I was growing up and people would say it, I used to be so offended, like, nah, sensitive, I'm tough. And then I realized, oh, you are sensitive as like you are sensitive. And I realized that that was my superpower. My thing is I feel people, I see it, I can sense when things are off. I can feel like, that's not gonna land. And I now use it to fuel me where I'm just like, oh,
Yeah.
if I'm not emotional, if I'm not, I don't feel it, I know I'm not in the right room. Like I know that
Yeah.
it's not right for me. And so like honoring that. And I also think that like my work has to fulfill this part of me that says, like, we can leave whatever this version of this life better. And how we define better is completely up to you, but I
Hmm.
define it for myself, right? And so for me, in my lived experience, I get to define success or like leaving the world better by saying, like, I want women to get their fair shake. I want women who are leading some of the most dynamic work that we've ever seen to get their celebration. I want Africa to continue to be seen as a superpower. When I was growing up, Africa was seen almost like as a background thing where it's just kind of like they had all these jokes and like we all know the things that people say about Africans growing up. And I'm like, now we are seeing people shift and want to go and live on the continent. Let's go. Like,
Right.
like, to me, that is success. And then ultimately, I think that this goes back to my womanhood. My thing is success is a life full of love and peace and joy and friendships and family where I feel emotionally safe. I feel like I can be my best self. And I don't mean my best self by like, there's all these tropes that talk about like, you need to be your authentic self. I think that your authentic self varies depending on your environment. It just changes depending on what and who you're around, right? But to me, to be in a space where I always have refuge, not only in my faith and who I know who I belong to, but also in my earthly spaces of family and friends. And I can have all of the success in the world, but if I don't have my people and peace around that, to me, I have.
Mm.
And so I'm constantly refining and approaching the way I work on myself. And I believe that if I'm not there, then I am excited for the future because have a life of abundance. I say all the time, life is generous and life and God has been indeed generous for me.
Amen. Amen, child.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, we gonna wrap this up.
I thought you was gonna ask me about dating. I'm kidding.
Say you know what? Say it for the people, child.
No, 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 no.
This gonna make the teaser, child.
Please don't embarrass me in front of my mom. My mom is the one who's putting the pressure on me. So,
First of all,
baby,
you look great, child. They gonna be in my DMs.
you-
Bukky, thank you. This has been an amazing, amazing conversation.
you're great.
Just thank you for joining me and just continuing to share the richness of your background, your initiatives. This is right on time.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to head out to Africa with you.
Let's go. Let's go.
If this conversation sparks something for you, don't let it stop here. Subscribe to the On Brand On Purpose podcast, share this episode, and take my free personal brand alignment assessment to get clear on how your identity, influence, and intention are showing up today. And if you're ready to build authority on your own terms, check out the Authority Builder online course. All right, y'all, have a good one and stay on brand and on purpose.